All right. Hey, everyone. Sorry I'm running behind today. It's been a little bit of a hectic day over here. Hope everyone's doing well. All right. So let's get right into it. All right. Let me make sure I can see everything. Okay, cool. So if you're new to the stream, welcome. Let me just explain to you how this works real quick. So first, I'm going to run through the charts. Okay. We're going to look at Bitcoin, a few other markets. Then, actually, no, we're going to talk about the economic calendar first. It's the first thing we got to do. And then we look at the charts, right? Run through Bitcoin and these other charts. And then after that, we can go over charts that you'd like to look at. If there's anything you'd like to see, if that's the case, you could put it in the channel now. All right. But and put like, if you want to see a symbol, for example, for a stock or a coin or whatever, put like long or short to let me know what you're thinking, and then the symbol. And then I can give you some context on that. All right, so that's going to work. All right, so do I have anyone watching me today or no? I don't see anyone in the chat. I know I'm running behind today. I apologize. Anyone watching? Because if I'm going to talk to myself for an hour, then I'll skip a few things to make this easier on everyone. I don't see anyone in the chat. All right, I'll give it like a minute. All right, so there he is. Only the bots. I figured that. I figured only the bots are watching because who else would watch me? So I'm very popular with the bots. All right, so real quick economic calendar. Now, you guys, sometimes I like to just tell you what's on the calendar, and sometimes I like you guys to tell me, "Hey, James, no problem. Thanks for stopping by and saying hello." So this is one of those days where I'd like to ask you what you think is important on the calendar. Now, we've had some funky price action here since Friday, and there are a few interesting things to talk about. But I understand what has the I haven't checked. Has the government opened yet? Is the government in operation yet or no? Because I haven't checked that. I probably should have checked, but I haven't. So if the government is open, then we're going to have our regularly scheduled reports, and we're still missing our non-farm payrolls and stuff like that, right? That's still, we need to know what that is, right? We don't know what that is. The week that it was supposed to come out, they used the ADP number instead as a proxy. All right. So can someone tell me, is the government open or no? So if they're not open, then everything is delayed, and the economic calendar doesn't really matter that much. All right. So can someone let me know in the chat? All right. So anyway, I'm guessing that they're still closed. Now, let's talk about Friday real quick. While we're sort of on the subject of the economic calendar. So this was Friday over here, right? This massive red candle. Anyone get caught in that? That candle from what was the high? 122, and the low on this chart is 107. Okay, that's on the Coinbase chart. I looked at other charts. I see no one has anything to say about the calendar. I looked at other charts and I saw a low of 102 on like the perpetual futures charts. Now, at first I thought that was probably a bad tick, but then I saw it across numerous charts. I even saw it on a CFD chart from one of the brokers that I look at. I saw 102 also. So, this Coinbase chart is not a perpetual futures contract. It's the actual, spot Bitcoin. So usually when you see something like that confusion, when you see something like 102, something like that, what is that? Why does that happen? That's because when people get margined out of their positions in futures markets, right? You're using margin. On the spot market, you're usually not, right? There's no margin for spot. That's what you use futures for. That's the whole point of futures, right? So, or at least you have a choice or whatever. So when everyone gets margined out, when they're in a position and they keep putting on more or whatever, then when everyone gets blown out of their positions, you see an exaggerated move like that, where it'll tick some ridiculous number like 102. and then it comes right back up, right? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we can't really count that as major support breaks as far as 102. We can't count that. Now, as far as 107 goes, I'm going to use that, okay, as my point of reference, not 102 or 100. Now, so I don't know if you know, but all of this, well, you probably all know that all of this originated from a tweet, right? First, it started with the day before China comes out with their making some changes with the rare earth stuff, and then we get the reactionary tweet. Now, here's why of course, you all know that, but here's why I'm mentioning it is because I don't know if you know this, but the day before, or yeah, basically the day before the tweet, there was unusual activity in Bitcoin, right? There was an $80 million position short taken in Bitcoin. You guys know about this? $80 million short position in Bitcoin. And that and Ethereum. 1 minute before the tweet was, I don't know, the accumulation of another $30 million short, all from the same wallet address. This is on YouTube. That's how I know. Okay. And that position, the position was closed after the tweet. Okay. The profit was $190 million in 1 day. Now think about that. $190 million. Someone made $190 million in this move right here. Someone, one person. Okay, you guys know about that? Well, it was clearly someone who knew. It had to be someone clearly connected to White House activity, because it was up to 1 minute before before the actual tweet. The position was the process of the position opening was up to 1 minute. Do you guys know that? Up to 1 minute, and then 1 minute after the tweet came out, and then it was closed, I guess, that day after we had that sell off. Anyone get caught in that? So I bring this up because that's how you make money in this game. Okay, not all these fake gurus with their fake strategies. You make money when you have inside information, and no one's going to get caught for that. Is that illegal? Yeah, it's illegal. But in the Bitcoin world, maybe not as much as like the stocks. But recently, AMD had a similar situation. Okay, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but AMD had that thing with OpenAI or whatever. They had that deal. There was unusual options activity like a couple of days before or something like that, where an enormous amount of calls were being bought. Okay, before the announcement, someone knew. Clearly, someone knew. So that's how you make money in this game. That's how you really make money, like big money. Okay. Now, could you have spotted these things beforehand? Well, there are apps out there that will point you to the fact that there's unusual activity. But the thing is, the problem with that is you don't know if that's going to lead to something like this, because sometimes that unusual activity could be an institution or a market maker hedging, or it may not be because of some known insider information, right? On top of that, a lot of times they know, the ones that are opening these positions, they know that the world can see them on the, like, if they're tracking like the wallet addresses or whatever, the whale addresses, and they know. So they're going to try to make it confusing as well, right? So again, that's why it's like, okay, the solution should be simple. Just get one of those apps that track whale activity. And when something pops up, just take a position. But it doesn't work like that. Like it's not that precise. Okay. So there was a huge, from one exchange to another. Don't know if you noticed that. Binance sucked. Also, stop loss. Ah, I mean, I'm not familiar with that, Grego. Thanks for sharing. I'm not familiar with that. Alex from Romania. I was waiting for Alex. Yeah. So anyway, so that I thought it was very interesting how, someone knew and now we have all this drama, right? No, my point is now you guys remember when we were talking about this a week ago up in here, why do I always tell you don't buy the highs? Right? Now, I had no idea that this tweet was coming out, but this is what happens. I mean, it just takes you by surprise out of nowhere, a tweet out of nowhere, right? We were lacking a catalyst. That was the catalyst. We were at a range high on Bitcoin. I was telling people buying this thing, you could read my trading view reports. Buying this thing above 125 or in that area was a bad idea. It was high risk, right? The risk of retrace was very high, but there was no catalyst. And this thing looked like it was just going to keep going. We had that breakout, went to 126, whatever. But what do I tell people about that? If you take such a breakout like on this time frame, and the next candle you get is like a failure candle, I mean that right there alone tells you that it's a false breakout right there. Okay, so that's you need to use that type of information to manage risk. But we are in the blind here. We do everything blindly. We don't have inside information, right? That's why it's so unfair. The tweet was only the catalyst. The real problem were the market makers. Okay. Oh, well, I don't know anything about that. The market makers who orchestrated with zero. I mean, they look. Here's the thing: market makers typically they're algos, right? Typically, and right. Well, the thing is, here's the thing. I learned something. I've been researching market making recently, right? There's a lot of information out there about how market makers actually work. You have to understand something. Anyone can be a market maker if you have the money, right? Because basically, a market maker, the whole purpose of a market maker is to be on both sides of the market, right? So when there's a sell-off, they have to step in and buy. But here's what happens. When they have smart algorithms out there that read the news, okay? And well, here's the thing. They read the news. So when some adverse news comes out like that, the algo knows to step aside. It knows to do that, or what it do it'll widen its spread, right? So and there was probably so many orders coming in that any market maker that was there, they were getting filled. So well, here's the thing: the exchanges rely on market makers. They're not supposed to make their own market, right? An exchange is not supposed to be a market maker. They're supposed to provide the place where the exchange happens, but they're supposed to have market makers, right? So, like for example, if you wanted to be a market maker for Binance, or you wanted to be a market maker for Whitebit, you could be one. But the thing is, there's certain rules you have to follow, and you have to have money, and you have to have money on both. You have to have an account because you're going to basically build inventory on both sides of the market. And the idea is you're supposed to make money from the spread. But market makers, right? Again, they're not people; they're algos. They can adjust when a piece. It's called adverse selection. Adverse selection is when a trade comes into the market from an insider, someone that knows something, right? The market maker doesn't want to take that trade because that's a high risk trade, right? So when some piece of news or something heavy comes in like that, they're gonna step aside, or they're gonna widen their spreads, and whoever is left there is gonna get tapped. They lose money in these situations, right? I'm not here sitting here to defend market makers, but they also can lose money if they get too much inventory on one side and their algo isn't balancing, because they're supposed to be delta neutral. They're supposed to be balanced. So that means if they're net long, they should be hedging somewhere else. They have to have algos do this for them. If something happens too fast, or they're not hedged or whatever, they get caught and they lose money. So that does happen. They don't make money all the time in these situations. Just understand that. And also, exchanges are not supposed to make markets. they rely on market makers, right? Like, and I learned this when I was over with Whitebit. I met some of these market maker people, and also the guy that does the business with them, that basically. And I said, don't you make your own markets? And they're like, no, we have to rely on market makers, right? So they do deals with these market makers, and market makers come in with their own money, and the idea is to facilitate trade on their platform so that there's a more stable market, and it attracts who? Retail traders. That is the whole purpose of a market maker, right? So any of you could be one. You could be a market maker. You just have to open an account with them, and then you have to have a way of making the market. And it's not something that you could do manually. None of them do it manually, right? The guys that I spoke to are all algo guys, and I was trying to like understand what it is that they do, and it's all math, and it's all automated. Okay, so they don't sit there and actually trade. So it's very interesting how they work, but they do have advantages to protect themselves. And they can see things that retail cannot see. But at the same time, they can also get caught. And they can also have like adverse selection again, where someone comes into the market, takes a huge position, and they're on the other, and the market maker's like, yeah, I'm on the other side of that. And someone knows something, right? And the market maker basically gets hammered because someone with inside information comes into the market, right? This happens on those betting markets like Poly Market. This happens all the time. Those betting markets, the whole purpose of them is to facilitate or attract inside information. If you think about it, uh, yeah, I don't know how Binance. You know what? I don't like Binance. I never liked them. I was never a Binance. I messed around with them like a long time ago, and I never liked them. So I don't know how they do things, but I'm not surprised that things get all out of whack. Things get all out of hand. You can't place orders. You can't do this. You can't do that when things are chaotic like that. Now they're going to say, well, our systems weren't working, or our systems are overwhelmed. They're probably going to come up with excuses like that. That's usually what they do. But I mean, even my prop firm, right? Their website went offline at that. Like the whole, like, you couldn't get onto the website to like open an account or adjust, or you couldn't do anything. The website was offline. So, excuse me, and that was a prop firm. So so when things get chaotic like that, everything there's an overload like everywhere. And I don't know who's telling the truth, who's not. I certainly wouldn't trust Binance. Definitely wouldn't trust anything that they say. So anyway, all right, but it was an interesting situation. Now let's talk about where we are now, and has anything really changed? Well, in terms of the bigger picture here, nothing has changed. We had that dramatic move to where? Back into the middle of the range, right? The 113K area. Basically, we went up much lower, but we came right back. And look, we're just kind of gyrating in that area. I'm looking at this still as range bound. We're still in a range four. In a wave four. I thought that this move might have been the beginning of the broader corrective move, because usually that's how they start. Like if you look at a weekly chart, I mean, look at this. Look, that's the weekly candle, right? Usually, when you get like a very massive candle like that on the weekly time frame, that's usually how the new trend begins, right? Usually, but the thing is, that doesn't guarantee that the trend has changed. And the thing is, that move was a result of basically a tweet, right? And like, has anything changed? Are there tariffs in effect yet, or anything like that? No, right? So if that was just a bluff, then the market is probably going to go back to normal, and that was just an overreaction, most likely. But that's what I mean. That's those when you're playing this game, especially when you're in the bigger picture, right? Any moron that invested and bought in those high 120s, this is what you get caught in, and now you have to hope that it comes back. Now, as far as that, again, if we're in wave four, then it's just a consolidation. And again, looking for the breakout. Now, if we get a lower high around that 118 to 120K area, which I suspect we might, that's what I have drawn here. If we get that lower high, then again, I don't believe that's a trend change. It could be, but we had a lower high back here also, right? And back here also. And we don't break supports. We just don't, right? I'm going to say that support right now is between 105 and 100K. I mean, we're looking at 108, this range over here based on this support here. We're looking at around 108. But if that's cleared and we're testing 105 or 100, then I'll say the range for the wave 4 is broken. Like it's no longer, we're probably in the corrective move now, right? The broader corrective move. If we break those supports, if we don't, if we keep testing them and we just hold them like we keep doing and we just keep bouncing off of them, then that's a sign of strength. Okay, so if nothing has changed, eventually we break out and we go to wave 5. If this was just nonsense that we just saw and it means nothing to the market, if it was again just overreaction, then this is still poised to break out to wave 5. Just keep that in mind. So the whole point of this analysis is don't jump to any conclusions. Don't get overly bearish just because of an overreaction. I mean, look at today's candle. What are we up? Right now, right now we're up 530 points, but we came off that low, right? We're going to count the low from 107, 107 to like what is that? 115 in one candle. That's not weakness, right? Usually, if this was going to be like we're going to zero type of situation, today should have looked like this, right? That's what we should have seen today. Same with the Nasdaq, same with the S&P. That's what we should have seen. We don't see anything like that. Everything bounced. So it was just an overreaction so far. Now, a move like this may also get people like opinionated, and they may say, okay, this is the pullback. I'm going to short this now. That's going to be a tough trade, in my opinion. I say if you're going to look to short anything, like an index or something like that, wait for the range high if you're going to do it, because or at least some type of clear resistance and a confirmation, because this is going to be trouble. If nothing has changed, we're likely to break out still. So please keep that in mind. That's the whole point, right? That's Bitcoin. So, and these other markets look very similar. Let's take a quick look at the S&P. Let's go to how about SPY? Okay. So I mean, look at this. Look at this. So right now we're up 11. We're up 11 points on this thing. Yeah. Well, yes, it certainly flushed a lot of people out, but and I guess you could say that the fact that it held though, I'm still considering that strong until we break supports, like the real supports on the bigger picture. I'm suspect of shorting. Even these markets. When I saw this, I'm like, oh, okay. That's the candle. That's the candle we've all been waiting for. We're still nowhere near any major supports. Yeah, right. Because it gets rid of all the heavy, like the weight, right? All those longs hold it back actually because they're long, right? And they're not buying. Now you're going to have people that are out that are going to be buying. So look at the S&P, right? This is SPY. This thing's up 11 points today. What was the low? 658, right? And the high is 665. And we're at 663. So we're a little bit off the high there. But I mean, we had a support over here, which was briefly, it was touched, but look where we are now, right? It was touched on Friday, but look where we are. So does that support break really count? I'm not going to count that. Now we're getting an inside bar over here. Maybe tomorrow we break the low of the inside bar, but we're going to be at the support again, at that support, which is a minor support. The real support on this thing is around here. And look, we basically touched it. I mean, look at that. Basically, we touched it in one day. Very tough to buy something like that because I mean, when I was looking at the YouTube videos after that, you know what they were all saying, right? S&P is going to be doing that on Monday. They were all saying it. No one was saying it's going to bounce. They were all saying, this thing's going to zero. All of them. Okay? All your YouTube clowns were saying that. So everyone overreacted. Even one of the brokers that I use, right, AMP, they sent out an email yesterday. Okay, they sent out an email about margin. They changed their margin. They usually when they expect a lot of problems, they usually raise their margin requirements. And early in the day, they sent out, we're raising our margin requirements. They usually do that for news reports, right? Not for like a regular day. So they send out the email, we're going to raise, and then by evening, when the market opened, oh, we're going back to normal. So even they overreacted, right? So no one knows anything, man. Anyway, the fact that we're here, I don't know. I think this whole thing was just an overreaction so far. If we test these supports again and break them, that's another story. So this could be the beginning of a trend change. It's possible, but it's still too early to tell. That's the conclusion. Okay? That's the conclusion. Hey, Peter, how are you? Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. So has anyone gotten caught in this? I hope not. That's the SPY, right? The Nasdaq's going to look the same way. So we're at 658 is the low. So wait, let's just take a quick look at a 5-minute chart. No, 5-minute chart on this thing. This is the S&P. This is the SPY. Okay, I mean this is a 5-minute chart intraday. Okay, this is the market open over here. I mean, look at this. I mean, that's not exactly a bearish situation right there. I mean, looks like the lowest we went was this, 661 for the day, pretty much so far, right? Besides the open, you just have higher lows. I mean, I don't know. This thing's not looking bearish to me. Anyway, so what's the market waiting for, right? We're going to be waiting for more tweets. We're going to wait for a reaction from China or something, or retaliation. I don't know. I haven't been following the news, so you guys may know more than me. If China has retaliated, I guess not, because if there was some sort of escalation, the market would probably be going lower, and it's not. Okay, I think there was a tweet yesterday from Trump saying we're going to just. It was like a nice tweet. I don't know if that was real or made up. You guys know what I'm talking about? Let's take a quick look at gold. Okay. Gold. 41 up another 88 points. Man, this thing is just close your eyes and just buy it. Look at this. There's nothing you can do here. Like, how do you buy this? Anyone buying gold? I'm not buying gold. Like, I just can't do this. Like, this is nuts. I'm just curious. Let's just take a look. What does a 5-minute chart of this look like? Let's just take a look. Where was the open? Was the stock market open was around here somewhere? Around here. I mean, it looks very similar to the S&P, actually. And it's been pulling back all day. Huh. After the initial overnight run up there. That's nuts. Anyone buying this thing? Like, it's like, how do you buy gold at the highs? But it's like every week it makes new highs. It looked like a week, what is this? This is the daily, right? So this is Friday. Thursday, it looked like it was poised to pull back a bit. No pullback. Inside bar, break of Friday's high today, and there you go. Higher high. I don't know. I can't buy this thing. I've been buying gold since August. Okay. Yeah, I mean, wow, it's a great long UTXO. Like, I mean, hard to buy now though. Just like that Bitcoin situation. It's hard to buy now. I mean, 1, 2, 3. You could say this is 4, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, you can count 5 of 5 waves in that. I don't know. So yeah, that's nothing really you could do with that. Besides, if you're long, hold on, because there's no reason to sell right now. That's certainly not a reason to sell. There's no pin bar. There's no red candle. There's nothing. Let's take a quick look at how have the bonds changed as a result of all this. So these are the bond price, the futures, right? The bond price. Binance, while Coinbase, it was still sitting, Yeah, so that's interesting, Peter. Yeah, we had some other people talking about Binance as well earlier. And, that's the market makers, man. Those, see, the way I understand it, right? It's not Binance that manages their customers, the trades. They have to rely on market makers, right? Third party market makers, which is not supposed to be Binance. Okay, and so it's the market makers. Remember, for these exchanges, they don't have the same regulation as, like, a market maker for like the Nasdaq or a market maker for a stock, right? They have more regulation. These things like Binance or Coinbase, they don't have that type of regulation. So they could probably do all kinds of things like step away, or widen their spread dramatically, because they know, the algo knows, because it looks for news. And when certain news item comes out, it knows to open up those spreads, right? And since, if there are no rules against them doing that, they're going to do it. If they can abuse, they're going to abuse, right? That's part of the regulatory problem, right? Market makers can do whatever they want. So here are the bond prices. Bond prices went up here, right? Looks like we had a spike there on Friday. That's nuts. That's nuts. And probably if you had, I'm willing to bet, Alex, that if you had limit orders, you just happen to have limit orders, I bet you they wouldn't have filled. Right? They probably would have ignored your limit orders. Like, we're not filling this guy. Even though you had a limit order there to buy, they'll say, well, the system was all messed up. Couldn't fill you. But if you had stops, of course, those filled, right? At bad prices too, probably got slipped immensely. That's the problem with these markets when things get out of hand like that. Okay. So I'm curious, US 10Y. So the yield, this is the 10-year note yield, right? So the yield went lower. So this is starting to act more normal. The bond prices went up, the yield went lower. So this is lower interest rates, right? So I guess that's how the bond market is interpreting this, right? I mean, this here, this is the yield, and they're expecting more. I guess all this stuff too is for, if you, the first question I thought of was, well, how is he gonna interpret this? He's mentioned that tariff stuff many times, or you got to wait and see, whatever. How is he? So I guess what the bonds are saying here is he definitely has to cut rates. Okay. I'm wondering if people had limit orders, if they just so happen to coincidentally have limit orders below the market, like at ridiculous prices. I wonder if they filled. I'm willing to bet that they won't fill you. They, in those situations where you have where it's very advantageous for you, they'll probably be like, nope, not filling that. Sorry, we don't have to. It's not regulated. So anyway, this is interesting, because what this tells me is that they're expecting the Fed to continue to cut aggressively. That's what this says, right? So let's take a quick look at the dollar index before I start jumping around here. Now, dollar index relative to other, so we saw the rates are going lower, but dollar is going up. Man, but this is again the dollar against other currencies, which means the other currencies are suffering. The basket of currencies, the dollar is getting stronger against them. Man, I wouldn't want to be the Thai baht. All right. So anyway, all right. So that's these. Let's take a look at. Let's jump around. We have to take a look at one more. Oil, CL1. Oil has been strange too. Oil. So when rates go lower, something like oil should be going higher, right? But look, oil got hammered on Friday. Interestingly enough. Well, I guess all that tariff stuff has a negative effect on oil. I guess because there'll be less trade. I guess I don't know, but clearly oil had a bad day too, right? And we're going back into those support areas on oil. But oil's tricky. I see a lower high. We're broke. Supports have been broken. We talked about longs in oil at this support level over here, right? But that broke thanks to that tariff drama. And now we have an inside bar here. So I don't know. Oil just does not make sense to me in terms of that. I guess oil has its own drivers, its own catalysts that I'm just not familiar with, right? But this may have something to do with demand on what energy and stuff. I guess they figure if there's 100% tariff or with the rare earth thing, if the costs of these materials rise, then there's less demand for energy. I guess I don't know. I'm guessing. So anyway, that's oil. All right, let's jump around here and let me see what you guys want to see. You guys have anything you guys want to take a look at? I mean, this is a wild situation. I mean, we're basically dependent now on Truth Social for market signals. That's what this really summarizes to. You have to just watch Truth Social all day for a tweet because that's what's going to determine where the market goes. Technical analysis at this point, where was it helpful? Well, it tells you the levels, right? That's pretty much it. That's it. So you could measure your risk from there. Oh, okay, I shouldn't be buying up here. I should be thinking about buying around these lows. That's it. And it's interesting that, all of this lack of reliability from these exchanges like Binance and whatever, it just goes to show gold is in a bull market. You don't say. It sure is. You gonna buy some now, Peter? I wouldn't. I mean, we've been talking about gold. We talk about gold every week, and every week we look at it. Higher highs, higher highs. We could see. Okay, sure. So guys, so you guys realize that these exchanges now, when we have situations like this, that's when the vulnerabilities of these exchanges become apparent, right? Because you don't expect this kind of thing. Like when there's chaos, you expect your exchange to be reliable. You expect to be able to get in and out of stuff at least, right? Oh, you're in. Okay. Yeah. I mean, at this point, Peter, there's no reason to get out of gold. It's just I wouldn't buy more now. I mean, it's things on its highs, right? So here's this one. I mean, let's take a look at the weekly chart. All of these coins and all of these markets, they had that dramatic low, right? I mean, look at this. Look at this. Right? Again, so all we can really get from here are levels. At this point, right now, right, you had this dramatic bounce, right, off of that area, puts you right back into the middle of the range. So that was my point in my TradingView article yesterday. There's not much we could do with the middle of the range, right? I mean, this is a highly random area. It's going to be across the board. Bitcoin looks like this too. That 113K area, 113, 114, whatever, that area, that's the middle of this range, right? that's a tough spot to take new positions on either side because it's going to be highly random. And the market needs to make a decision, right? Is this a higher low that should lead to a higher high? I mean, theoretically, that is a higher low. So, in theory, we should see the higher high. Now, keep in mind, the next few months are what? Holiday, right? So, usually this month is usually when we get the Santa rally bottom, right? That's usually like the bottom. And then it rallies for the next few months, right? The Santa rally. Now, that's been the pattern for quite some time. It's not always exactly the same, but the general idea, right? This month is typically bearish, but once that bearishness is smoothed over, then it's party time. Now, something to think about, and I was doing some research on this. The consumer, at least in the US, and I'm guessing in other parts of the world as well, the consumer is struggling right now from the reports that I see. Many consumers have to borrow money to buy food, to buy groceries. They have to borrow money to buy groceries. So when I see stuff like that, I'm like, all right, so then how, if that's the case, then how are people going to buy gifts? So, like, what's the holiday going to be like? I saw that a softer holiday, activities expected, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. Just something to keep in mind. I guess we should be looking for signs. I mean, you have the Federal Reserve. They're going to come out the fourth week of this month. They're going to cut rates. Judging by that chart with the bonds we just looked at, it looks like that's pricing that in. Like, it looks like we're going to have a easy monetary policy there, right? Rates aren't rising, so I mean, it takes a little while for that to be felt. It takes months. So I wouldn't really coincide that with the holiday season, but I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, do you guys see the information? Like it's all over like this. There's these guys on YouTube and stuff that do like economic stuff, and I looked in other sources as well, and it just seems that the consumer is tapped out, at least in this country. And I figure if that's the case in this country, it's probably going to be the case in some other countries that depend on this country. But I don't know. I don't follow the global uh, consumer situation. But what do you guys think? Don't be shy, because I'm just wondering. You know, if everyone's tapped out and everyone has to borrow money to buy food, how do we buy gifts? How are we gonna, and I understand that like deals are gonna be really big this year. Like, anyone that has aggressive deals, like, 90% savings on the new TV, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's where people are gonna spend their money on deep deals, like very attractive deals. That's who's gonna win, the people that have the biggest deals. Because everyone's gonna be cost conscious because no one has money. But people are still gonna buy gifts, I guess. You guys following my train of thought on that? Am I crazy? Alex, what do you think? So just something to think about, because this month usually is when we get that Santa rally bottom, and then we rally for the next 2 months. Was this move that we saw on Friday the Santa rally bottom? I mean, when we go back to the SPY, was it? Grego says, if the government, I don't know if a rate cut can happen. Well, Grego, I was wondering about that myself. And the Federal Reserve, remember, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent of the government, right? Number one. Number two, they could still make the decision in the blind, like in the dark, they can do it, right? So I was wondering that too. Like, does that delay the rate cut? Is Powell going to come out and say, well, We don't know what the data is, so we can't do anything. I mean, he could use that as an excuse. He certainly could use that as an excuse. And as we know, he's been very reluctant to cut rates. But that's a good question. The market is expecting him to cut, even in the face of this government drama. If you look at the Fed watch tool, I mean, he's expected to cut. So the only real options are, okay, the dollars and euros are losing value. Yeah, so I guess that's what people are putting their money to protect it. I mean, that explains gold, right? That's usually the argument for gold. But like, what if Powell doesn't cut the rates because he says, I don't know the information because I'm getting no government reports? I guess he can do that. But the market is not going to want to hear that one because the market's expecting him to cut, right? He basically led the market to believe that he's going to cut. And if the market was going to price in that he wasn't going to cut, we'd be continuing to sell off. Or even that government drama stuff would cause the market to sell. The market does not care about the government, whatever. The market just shrugs it off like, who cares? We don't need those people anyway, right? I mean, that the government closing means nothing to the market. Now, if Powell changes his mind and blames that, you'll see some more selling, in my opinion, because the market has priced in a cut. He's supposed to cut on the 4th week of this month. He's supposed to do it. Just look at the Fed. The Fed watch tool gives you an idea of how the market's pricing in. And if it's a high percentage that he's expected to cut, that means it's priced in. So if he does something that's not in line with that, the market has to adjust, right? So just keep that in mind. How are we closing here? A little lower. We closed 662. The low is 658. So the high was 665 on this thing. That's certainly not the low, right? I mean, this is the S&P. Let's just look at that 5-minute real quick. I mean, this is how the S&P closed the day out. This is the high over here. This is the high up here. This is the high of the day on the S&P, right? And this is where we closed. Interesting. I don't see a close over here. I don't see that. You guys see that? I don't see it. So I don't know, man. I just think this was just an overreaction, and everything is now going to depend on, like, if it was just a bluff, which it's very possible, could just have been a bluff, like, just a big talk, tough guy talk. I think it's first of all, I think China baited him into doing that because China knows how this guy reacts. You know who I'm talking about, and I think they baited him, and but now it's all about what tweet comes out next and who makes the next move. That's what's going to shape this, in my opinion. So we could sit here and we can look at all this charting stuff, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot. We can determine levels, and the market can touch levels, but then the market needs to confirm around levels. So remember that, guys. It's the confirmation that matters. Have your levels in place, like I show you here on these charts. That's the whole point of these streams. And if you get the confirmation around those levels, there may be something to do. Now, on these time frames, confirmation can take an entire day, or you could use an hourly time frame or something like that. But still, if you decide to step in, like stepping in, something like this is very hard to do. Very hard. It looks easy after the fact, but remember, that was the actual level, okay, which was 659. And this thing went to 646 in a matter of hours or less than that. So that's not easy to trade, especially if you're going to try to fade that or step in front of that. That's very hard. Now you could go with small, very small size, but I mean, so as far as like bigger picture and investing, is this a time to buy like the pullback? I wouldn't touch this stuff. I still won't, even though we haven't seen anything dramatic break yet. It's just a matter of a tweet. That's the problem that I have. It's a matter of a tweet. So perhaps on something like the S&P and Bitcoin, watch them. Look, they moved together on that day, pretty much, right? I mean, the Nasdaq moved early in the day, and then at the close of the day, that's when Bitcoin got the hammering. So watch like a level like that, and you have to have some sort of plan. The thing is too, if you're going to step in for a swing trade, make sure you use stops. Like there's just you have to in these situations, otherwise you will blow your account. Because if there's another major leg and it's another 1,000 points or whatever, you will blow your account. Right? Trying to step into something like that, it's very hard to do. So that's why, like even for investing, I still think it's early. And I've made that mistake before back here. Just look at this. I just want to make one more point here before I wrap this up. This was Friday, right? This was the tariff drama we got back in April, right? When we got that drama back here, that was back here. Look at the size of the candle. I mean, just look at that. So when I see stuff like that, that just goes to show the vulnerability. So it's mixed right now. It's tough to say. If they comb everything over and everyone plays nice, then nothing has changed. We'll probably go to new highs. But if any more adverse drama comes out, and we see another candle like this, and we start clearing these supports, I would hold off on everything, right? Until we see stability appear, break levels and then stability. Right now, this can go either way. It's not really stability yet. It can go either way because we're still waiting. On November 1st, do the tariffs go into effect? Yes or no? That's the big question, right? Is this all just a game? Is this all just they're going to have negotiations? I believe they're supposed to have negotiations in Korea or something like that. That was the original plan. Is that still going to happen? Are they going to play nice? That's what's going to shape this. So use the levels on your charts. Use the levels on your charts to have an awareness of where we are. But then if we do, just be prepared. If we do get some negative news, right? Maybe Powell decides he's not cutting rates. Okay, that's gonna cause problems, in my opinion. The market is not pricing that in. So if we're in that type of situation, I would not aggressively step into anything. Watch the levels break. Wait for stability. Wait for stability. You know why? If the market's going to reverse and turn around, you'll have plenty of time to get long. Just think of it like that. Look at this back here, right? I mean, as ugly as that sell-off was, very ugly, right? Buying into this, which I was doing, by the way, was extremely risky and very hard to do. And because of that, because I bought into this too early, I got out too early. Okay. Look at all this time that you had after that high or low. Look how much you had plenty of time to get involved. Even if it was small and you're doing small bites and buying pullbacks and whatever carefully, there was just plenty of opportunity to get long. Even if you just waited for the massive reversal candle, right? And then any type of pullback after that candle, there was a lot of opportunity in here if you were looking for aggressive longs. You see what I mean? So I'm mentioning this because that's what I would be looking for on something like the S&P, right? Right now we have the dramatic candle on the bearish side. And this inside bar, we can't really say anything about this yet. Right? Until we have some more clarity from the from what's going on in the world. Does that make sense? So any questions, guys? I know. I mean, I don't have a lot to say today, so I apologize if I'm not delivering enough value. But I mean, there's really not much to say. There's a lot of talk out there, a lot of drama. There's a lot of overreaction. Like I said, all the videos pointed to today we were going to go to zero. Today was going to be horrible, right? And we were up, about 500 or 600 points or whatever, right? But today was supposed to be negative, whatever. So don't listen to that stuff. Follow your levels, and just wait for. I mean, this market is all dependent on how this drama plays out. And it's tough to say which way it would go, but I would imagine they're going to try to work things out. Because 100% tariff on top of the 30% on China on stuff coming from China or whatever, right? And then they're going to do the rare earth thing on us. I don't know, man. That doesn't sound like anyone's going to win on that one. I don't look at it. BTC dominance. It's probably not going to say much, but let's take a look. What is that? BTC. How do I get to that? Is that BTCD? Let me see. Market cap BTC dominance. Is it this one? Is that the chart? I mean, look, the dominance obviously has been declining. Interestingly enough, right? I mean, look, lower high, lower high. Okay, so it's this. I'm looking at this chart here, BTCD. Okay, so let's look at a weekly. This is the weekly chart. Wow. I mean, it looks like it's peaked, and you have a lower high. Now, I mean, I don't know if you could really apply technical analysis too much to something like this, but there is a pin bar, there is a lower high, and it looks like it's peaked. So if this is true, and we start breaking these lower levels, we start breaking these supports, I would imagine that that would be bullish for altcoins, right? If people are selling their Bitcoin to buy altcoins, is that typically what this represents? I don't know. Bitcoin's peaked. I think that's what that would be telling us. Do you guys agree? Now, I don't use Bitcoin dominance, so you guys would probably know more than me. But that's what the chart is showing, that it's losing, right? It's losing its dominance. So I'm guessing that that means you should see altcoins do better, like Ethereum. Okay. So I guess you can sort of use that as a guide. But I don't know what that says about this tariff situation. You know what I mean? So be careful, guys. Just be careful out there. You know, you have these exchanges like Binance, as you all have learned, they're not exactly reliable in these situations. You know, when things get chaotic. So that's a risk that you must deal with. That's a risk that you have to consider when you're trying to build positions, or you're trying to buy stuff or whatever, manage positions. And that's why leverage is a bad idea when you're over leveraged, because that's when people get blown out, right? When you look at those Bitcoin perp charts and you see the 102 low, like, what is that? I thought that was a bad tick, but I see it on a number of charts. 102, a lot of people got margined out, is what that means. So, all right, you guys. So I hope I answered your questions. That's all I can say really is we have to see how this plays out. We're in the middle of the range here. Not exactly a place to buy, not exactly a place to sell for Bitcoin and many of these other charts. Wait for a support. Wait for a confirmation at that support. Otherwise, to play this game, I really believe you have to play on smaller time frames. Day trade on your 5 minute or something. And if that's not your thing, then it's okay. It's okay to sit it out, and wait for better levels. Set up your notifications and wait for better levels. And when you reach a level, that's when you should start watching. Right? Watch for confirmation. Watch for, if you're at a support, watch for the buying to step in. If it cleans through that level like it's not even there, then that's a good reason to step aside. Right? Don't worry about trying to get the best price. Usually trying to get the best price is very costly. When you're dealing with bigger picture, when you're working on a 1 minute chart, that's another story. Okay? But we're not talking about 1 minute charts. Make sense? Make sense, you guys? Just looking at the chat here. All right. So yeah. So guys, I hope you found this helpful. If you can do me a favor, press the like button, press the subscribe button, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah. And I'll leave you with that. All right. So guys, you know where to find me. If you have any other questions, you can send me an email. And we'll do this again next time. All right. So enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you very much for watching.